Almost a week into the Singapore Writers' Festival, and the activities continue to draw book lovers and literature enthusiasts to explore this year's theme of Utopia, Dystopia. There are lots of events happening, including book signings, panel discussions, and of course a lot of talks. And to date, the Singapore Writers' Festival remains one of the few in the world that is multilingual. The lineup this year features more than 190 Singapore and international writers, including Britain's first female poet laureate, Carol Ann Duffy, and Nobel laureate Gao Xingjian. So to discuss how the literary art scene is developing in Singapore, I have with me Director of the Arts House, William Phuan, and writer Gwee Li Sui. So gentlemen, great having you today. So William, let's start with you. Okay. You recently wrote an article, you sent it into the Today newspaper, saying that Singapore can be a city of literature. What inspired that?
Well, it actually was to affirm the article of the writer that we have a lot of talent. UNESCO has this City of Literature appointment, and so far they've appointed 6 cities like Dublin, Iowa, Edinburgh, Melbourne. And all these cities have a long literary tradition, and very, very strong writers have made an impact. But when we look at them, actually Singapore also has some of these criteria that they have, like a strong library system, strong education, high literacy rate. So in fact, we feel very, very strongly that Singapore can work towards that. It's an aspiration for Singapore to become a city of literature, so because we have a lot of talent. Absolutely.
So Gwee, you know, a lot of Asian writers have been gaining prominence in the past few years. So do you think it's just a matter of time before we have our own Nobel Prize laureate?
Yeah, I kind of disagree a little with William here, because for me, I think, you know, we just have to relax a little about these things. Awards for writers, most of this, it comes as a bonus. It's not an aim that writers go for. And so in this sense, you know, the muse tend to work in mysterious ways. You know, you can't really plan for it to happen in a place or not.
You know, are you of the view, okay, you must be of the view that Singapore does not lack talent. So what is the problem then? Is it exposure?
Well, I think there are 2 aspects to it. One is readership. We're not embracing our writers enough. I mean, this year the Writers' Fest has 69 book launches. There's a lot. If you divide it out over 12 months, it's almost 6 book launches per month. And that's not counting all the other book launches throughout the whole year. So there are a lot of books out there, but how many books are being sold and being read by readers? So I feel that's one part of it. Another part is translation. A lot of our Singapore literature is actually in the other languages like Tamil, Malay, and Chinese, and they're not being translated, and they're not being made accessible to a wider readership. So I feel readership and as well as translation are 2 important aspects that we should look at.
Interesting. I didn't realize that. So how do you propose getting Singaporeans to, first of all, take our writers seriously, embrace them, and then get them to read the books?
I think well, getting people to read the books is one of those challenges that we are facing, and I think people should really take away the prejudice that they have that international or foreign writers are better than Singaporean writers, and that Singaporean writers deal with Singaporean issues. I think that is one big mistake that we always assume, and I think that if we take that away, when we assume the writers themselves actually write out of a certain environment, and a Singaporean writer should be able to produce works that Singaporean readers can enjoy more. I think that's the best way to go.
Because they talk about issues that Singaporeans can relate to.
Not just necessary issues. I think we should give Singaporean writers the benefit to be able to explore fantasy worlds, you know, all sorts of genres that we tend to give to international writers. Why don't we do this for our own people? Why do we like to limit our own writers?
So let's talk a bit about education. Fewer students taking literature in schools. The numbers have dipped over the years. Only 9% of the secondary 4 cohort last year took literature. So do you think schools have to play a bigger part in changing this perception of literature?
On that note, I'd just like to highlight 2 books that have just been launched over the Arts House the past weekend. Actually, one is a book called Little Things, edited by a couple of NIE English literature educators, and they also come up with a how-to book. So it's to help teachers, you know, use this material to use in schools. So in fact, the materials are out there, all these reference materials to help educators and teachers to bring all this literature into schools.
So the yellow book is Little Things. That's the anthology of poetry.
Right, that's right.
And the other one is Teaching Poetry to Adolescents.
Absolutely.
Okay,
right.
Very interesting. So, Gwee, you've talked about this. You say that, you know, the trend of not reading literature cannot be reversed without policy changes.
Yes.
What's your argument?
Well, simply is this, right? We like to, think in the same way as we think sometimes wrongly about sexism and racism, is that, until the people start from the ground to be less so, then we don't need to really bother with policy changes that will make things more less discriminatory. I think that's a wrong way to go about it. Why has it to be an either or? I mean, it can be a ground-out reaction towards a love of literature. At the same time, policy should be done in such a way that you free people to do these things, to write these things, and you don't come in all the time to tell people you shouldn't be exploring this. You should think about writing it for the nation. All this, and we limit our writers. We send them so many mixed signals. At the same time, at one point we say, please be free to tell your own stories, and on the other hand, we have all these other things that's always lingering around, like little goblins, gremlins in the mind.
Very passionate argument from both of you. But thank you very much for coming today. I'm sorry we ran out of time. It was great speaking to you.
Thank you very much.
And that was William and Gwee. And the Singapore Writers' Festival runs till 10th of November.